Thank you for coming on here, Sebastian. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. Good to be here. Thank you.
Yes, for sure. So, yeah, getting this thing started, would you be able to give us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's evolving and emerging. But I guess the latest description would be that I try to support the emerging new world in various ways. So, in one way, I am an entrepreneur. I have been an entrepreneur mostly from tech companies, but right now I'm building something different. Um, and then I have started to write content quite a bit. I'm actually writing a book at the moment about the same topic. Um, the framing is that I believe that we're going through a phase change moment for humanity. And there's particular ways how phase changes work and show up in nature. And I'm trying to draw the parallels. And I also support entrepreneurs and founders as a coach or a mentor. And that's usually tech companies, but yeah, could be anyone. So that's mostly what I'm doing at the moment.
Awesome. So, would you be able to get into what the phase change is all about? I know it may be a rather big topic, but can we generalize it in some way?
Sure. Yeah. So the thesis for me is that we may be experiencing a phase change as a collective on the species level. We see in nature different species or different properties change their state completely. The famous one being caterpillar to butterfly or the nymph to dragonfly. But then there are others like, water freezing completely is a full phase change from water molecules to ice crystals. But you also see it with ant colonies where certain thresholds are reached and completely different types of coordination become possible. And so I'm trying to draw the metaphor of these different phase change events occurring in nature and ask the question basically, why couldn't it happen for us as a species? And I'm tracing the different ways how phase changes are have certain properties that are quite similar across the different phase changes that we can observe. One of them, for instance, is that there's always a lot of chaos just before transformation and just before metamorphosis.
Mm,
Um, and generally speaking, that the breakdowns are necessary before the breakthroughs can really come through and emerge. And um, new properties can basically emerge that weren't there before. And so the other image that I work with is the imaginal cells from the transformation of the caterpillar to the butterfly, which the you may not you may know this, but the caterpillar actually goes through many different molds before it goes into the chrysalis, and then when it goes into the chrysalis, it's actually fully dissolved, and a certain sort of like cellular goo um, uh, exists within the caterpillar shell, and these imaginal cells come online that have been dormant within the caterpillar for a very long time, and they then build the caterpillar structure, the butterfly from scratch. And so I'm working in the book, I'm working with these kind of images to trace the breakdowns as well as breakthrough trends that are occurring pretty much at the same time. And I think this is sort of what you watch in the debates today, whether it's on Twitter or elsewhere, where it's people usually fall under one or the other camp, as in the breakdown people are, you know, climate dystopian and lost hope altogether for
yeah.
humanity, whereas the breakthrough people are usually techno optimists that are tracing, AI and quantum computing and whatnot
Hmm.
as, everything's great. And
Yeah.
I think the challenge and the opportunity is to hold both at the same time and see the bigger picture of breakdown and breakthrough being part of this bigger movement.
Yeah. Well said.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Very interesting, man. So, what would you say are the imaginal cells of humanity? That's what it's called, right? Imaginal? I never heard that before.
Yeah, it's a beautiful name, imaginal.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, it's the root is to, on the imago root work from Latin, and
mm,
it's really pointing back to our most fundamental capacity to imagine a different life and to become really co-creators of evolution, which I
yeah.
believe is now available to us with the different technologies coming online. And the way that I structure it, at least in my book, is talking about three different categories. One is foundational technologies. Foundational meaning they will most likely create the foundation of a completely new way of being and new species. Namely, the ones that I mentioned at least is AI plus robotics, um, genetic engineering, and quantum computing. So that's the first category of foundational technologies. The second category for me is systems changes, systems revolutions, you could call them as well, which are about sort of how we coordinate as a society. How do we coordinate value in particular? And that's why a very key revolution that is already underway for a number of years is the move away from a centralized inflation based, debt based monetary system towards a decentralized, deflationary system like Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is definitely a big imaginal cell from my point of view, um, in terms of the system change. The second system change that I'm tracking is how the new energy paradigm is going to really bring a lot of prosperity, in terms of also energy becoming more decentralized, because of new technologies in how we store energy. Battery technologies and solar have advanced tremendously, especially in the last 5 years, making it possible for people to harvest their own energy, basically. And
Mm-hmm.
so the combination of solar in particular, plus new battery energy, plus um, these small nuclear reactors that are being developed, which can be deployed very quickly, super safe. There's almost no, there is no risk of disintegration, basically, which used to be the big danger with these old nuclear reactors. Plus fusion energy, so solar plus batteries, small nuclear reactors, and fusion could or are pointing towards a energy abundance sort of epoch for humanity. And energy is always the base layer of economic prosperity and economic and
Yeah.
unleashing prosperity for society. And obviously, we're talking especially for the global south and rural areas which are lacking energy at the moment. The Sorry, I'm going a little bit
Are
into
you
quite a
good?
lot of depth, but
This is awesome.
the third system change that I'm tracking is how new governance structures will likely emerge that are more
Mm,
um, also more decentralized, essentially, and potentially very much enhanced by AI, as in it is, a very um, like a more fluid, more responsive way of reacting to certain signals in markets, in environments, in socioeconomic structures. Because with all the data that is becoming available and the models that are can parse that massive amount of data, you can basically adjust certain policies or you know fix certain issues way quicker and way more in a much more yet fluid way,
Efficient.
then efficient way, than
Mm-hmm.
through governmental bodies and politics essentially. And
Mm-hmm.
like the way that I think it will happen is like this sort of web of co-evolving with AI and data to be much more efficient, like you just said, in terms of
Mm-hmm.
governance.
Mm.
And then the last category for me is consciousness evolution, and consciousness evolution in terms of just different ways how humanity is healing and um, extending its own capacities, as well as increasing in different types of awareness. So I'm tracking, for instance, eco spirituality, eco awareness as one big strand, where lots of examples where, for instance, in New Zealand, a certain river was granted its own rights, and that being an example of how eco consciousness and eco spirituality is really entering the mainstream, where we are, I think, a sufficient amount of people are starting to really live the experience that we are part of the larger web of life, and it's entering policies, is entering local decentralized economies, etc. um, the second trend that I'm tracing under the consciousness evolution is the human potential movement, which to me is sort of this tra- um, fusion of personalized medicine, um, quantified self, quote unquote biohacking, of really pushing your own boundaries and extending your capabilities, extending your abilities in terms of um, also longevity, life extension, etc. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, the piece around real awareness of the sort of um, transpersonal nature of consciousness, or the fact that consciousness itself is foundational. And I'm particularly excited about that one in the long run, because to me that will potentially usher in a time when it will just be part of our DNA, collective psyche, that the self is ultimately somewhat an illusion, and we're all sort of celebrating this divine drama that we're in, and yeah, are less tethered to our identification with the ego,
Mm-hmm.
which hopefully will then really um, sort of really accelerate our understanding of being a collective, especially on
Mm.
this sort of more planetary scale. And so the bigger arc that I'm sort of trying to trace is whether we can really mature into a planetary species. And these three categories, whether it's foundational technologies, system changes, or consciousness evolution, are part of it. But there's obviously, that's my subjective perspective, and there's this sort of relationship between the individual and the collective that I'm still sort of sketching out at the moment.
Amazing. You just touched upon so many juicy topics. I don't even know where to take this conversation. That's awesome. I really want to read your book now.
You can become a better reader if you are keen, and give me some feedback on what I've written so far.
Yeah. Well, let's go down this route. I believe everything that you just listed will inevitably almost force us into the evolution of consciousness, in the evolution of who we are, or at least realizing who we are out of the ego. I believe the innovation and acceleration of the development of technology, the times that we're living in, are leading into some sort of forced ego death. And I don't think there's anything we can do about it. You know, it's going to lead us into a time of, as you said, abundance, but also a lot more time on our hands. Like, there's not going to be anything left to do other than examine what we are, because a lot of us are preoccupied with our jobs and trying to put food on the table, just trying to survive. But when we live in a time of abundance, when we have nuclear reactors at our house, we don't really have to worry about much per se. Then the only thing we're going to be left to do is seemingly meditate and just ponder, because we don't have time to ponder now. Like I said, we don't have time to just contemplate like what all of this is. So I like that the overarching premise where you're taking this is, whether you want to get into quantum computing, Bitcoin, AI, however it all relates, I believe is leading us into seeing what we really are. All of us, not just the select spiritual people, not just the sages and mystics. We all in some way become the sage because of the technology, or at least the potential's there. I'm not going to say all of us. Some of us may get sucked into the matrix, but at least the potential and capacity will be there for all of us to recognize that innate consciousness that is primary. It's
Mm,
the primary, not the secondary. But yeah, is that,
mm.
would you say, like a good summary of the the interesting times that we are in, the precipice that we seem to be living through?
Yeah, I mean, you're describing it so well and so poetically. To me, it
Thanks.
sort of echoes the idea of an initiation that we
Yeah,
find
right.
ourselves in.
Yeah.
That it's really this threshold moment and being initiated into a, like I said, a planetary civilization, ideally,
Mm, that's it.
that is mature. That is, at the moment, there's, you could describe our civilization as very adolescent, very sort of rambunctious and not taking responsibility, not being constrained. And this is the big, what Joanna Macy called the great turning that
Mm-hmm.
we find ourselves in. And it's happening right now. And it's
Mm-hmm.
most likely going to intensify because we've traced the breakthrough trends, but there's like a lot of breakdown trends as well,
Yeah.
which can be quite scary. And they will, I think you're right in saying they will lead to this dissolution moment and AKA, ego death of our existing structures, our held on beliefs and identifications with who we are individually as well as collectively.
Mm-hmm. Because just think about it now, right? What do most of us think we are? We think we are what we do,
Mm.
but who are we when there's nothing left to do?
Mm.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it will be a huge identity crisis. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always go back and forth between um, dystopia and utopia. I
Mm.
hope the breakdown doesn't overbear the breakthrough. As in, see, we're talking utopian. You just outlined a lot of great topics, a lot of great ideals that I believe are going to come to fruition. It might take a few years, maybe a few decades, but all of that just seems so perfect, right? Everything you just outlined. It's like, yes, of course, right? It just makes sense. Intuitively, it just makes sense. I just hope that the effect of breakdown, civil unrest, just people not making sense of what's going on. There's a whole list that I could name, but I don't want to name. But I hope the breakdown element of it, the chaotic element, doesn't get the best of the potential of where we could go, the potential utopian vision that you just outlined.
Yeah. Well, I think we can both sort of sense the breakdown potential, right? Like we both have a
Yeah.
feeling for, in real terms, we may have both spent a lot of time in very heart centered communities, or we sat in certain ceremonies, etc., or had our own sort of experiences that gave us the felt experience what this life really could be, and
Mm-hmm.
the incredible magical potential that it holds, for all of
Yeah.
us. Um, but I think it goes even way further. I think, if you trace it back to the phase change metaphors, um, one of the characteristics of phase changes is that there will be emergent properties that only come online later on, once the chaos phase has really like shaken everything off.
Yep.
Then new structures emerge. This
Mm-hmm.
is, especially in the example of the freezing water, where just before the uh, molecules lock into this crystalline structure, there's a fuck ton of like chaos, because basically
Mm.
what happens, molecules try out all these different new arrangements. It's called a nucleation phase. And in that moment, it just looks totally crazy. But in like a instant, they just at some point lock in and have found their new crystalline structure. And so I think, we have to, at least for myself, both be okay with the chaos that is yet to really most likely come, and at the same time also not detach from the loss and the grief that is, important to also feel through our own bodies and hearts and minds. So not become too sort of distant or apathetic about it. And so I think it's going to be like, it comes back to this model of like, it's an initiation, it's a rite of passage, perhaps a once in a species kind of event. We're not, like, to just really delineate it from past evolutions that we've gone through as a species. We've gone, for instance, from hunter-gatherer to agrarian uh, culture, or then from agrarian to an industrial civilization, and from industrial to the information age. These have been huge, groundbreaking, evolutionary moments and phases for humanity. But this one is different in many ways, because it's this, sometimes I see this sort of total crystal ball that we're sort of entering in, and no one knows really what the other side looks like. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you can just take AI, for instance, which at the current rate, the length of tasks that an AI can grok is doubling every 7 months. Now, a doubling every 7 months means that within 5 years, it's going to be around 388 times more efficient, more powerful. So it's a total exponential curve. And so, you just take that driver and that technology, and we're going totally parabolic. But there's many, many others that are sort of like colliding at the same time. Quantum computing, I could give you examples. What kind of calculations we can now do with quantum computers is truly mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And so we're hitting this inflection point on many levels, and it's gonna really rattle us. But it is this initiatory moment where we can really rise to the occasion ultimately, hopefully, to, you
Hopefully.
know, cross the chasm and thread the needle to get to the other side.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How you just described it, it's like this phase change is different because the evolution is up to us. Previously, it was at the whim of our environment, which we
Yeah.
still are in some way. But it's like now, if you really want to evolve monkeys, you have to do it yourself. It's not tied to Darwinian evolution so much anymore as it is to the own self evolution, our own evolution of consciousness. That is the
Yeah.
initiation.
Beautiful. Yeah. And within that is also this huge move from a state of victimhood to a state of empowerment.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you track the Gene Keys, the founder of the Gene Keys. He has this whole
Mm,
intuition that um, what we are going through has a lot to do with Gene Key number 55, which is a beautiful gene key, which is all about the dragonfly. And he sort of traces the metamorphosis of the dragonfly, which is first a nymph, a predator underwater, which literally has like fangs that look similar to a scorpion. It is a
mm,
pretty nasty, scary creature. And at some point, that creature just climbs up a little leaf and is completely vulnerable and in a territory and an environment it's fully unfamiliar with. And there it sort of completely sort of cuts open its exoskeleton and at some point unfurls these wings, and through hydraulics, because the water is still in there, sort of pushes itself up into the sky. And the way he describes the move from us moving from the state of victimhood, ultimately underlying all our extractive, um, hyper competitive behavior, um, is from his point of view is a state of victimhood, not really taking full accountability, full responsibility for who we are, for our actions, for our power. And so he has this beautiful image of, us transitioning to become this, yeah, aerial acrobat that has 360-degree vision and
mm.
is just in a completely different dimension than the nymph underwater.
Sounds like we're becoming angels.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, life in probably already like 20 years will look so vastly different.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, just think about the change that we've gone through in the last 20 years, right? 2005, no real smartphone around. AI wasn't at all as powerful as today. Genetic engineering wasn't really alive. Um, in terms of
Couldn't do
consciousness on
this.
the planet, yeah, we couldn't do this. Yeah, so
Internet
many
speeds are
things.
so slow,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah. So I think, yeah, 20 years and then let alone 100 years, right? Like what's going to happen in 100 years? I mean,
Oh,
so
alien world. We're not going to look the same. We're not going to be the same.
possibly. I like what you said about we are authors. We're sort of steering that evolution for the first time properly. It's
Hmm.
especially true with genetic engineering, where we can
Yeah,
sort of
literally.
redesign our own source code. And so it's that. Um, and it's this coming together of really godlike powers that we now have. I mean, there's this beautiful quote by E.O. Wilson. Um, we have Paleolithic emotions, um, medieval institutions, and now godlike technologies. And that's the predicament that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, that's good. And that's touching upon what I spoke on about before with the breakdown before the breakthrough. It's
Yeah.
like, hopefully we don't develop the technologies faster than consciousness, you know? Just look at the, for instance, of us having nuclear weapons,
Hmm.
right? The fact that we're talking about nuclear war in the times that we're in, all while all of this other stuff is going on with technology, the possible utopian vision. At the
Hmm.
same time, the conversations are had about nuclear war. So it's like, are we going to pass the test? We shall see. We shall see. It's quite peculiar in that way. We're at a
Yeah.
tipping point. I think
Yeah.
it's a necessity. The development of consciousness. We need to develop consciousness first before the technology comes about. But it seems like the technology is being developed way faster than our cultivation of consciousness. So that's what gets me worried. It's like, are we going to be able to handle it? With great power comes great responsibility. And I feel as though human beings don't have the responsibility quite nailed down at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the quote said, we have godlike technology and Paleolithic emotions. So,
Yeah.
That at some point we've had a lot of instances where we were very lucky already,
Mm,
especially with nuclear weapons. I don't know if you know about this one instance where um, in Soviet Russia, they received this signal that apparently nukes were fired from the states, but it was a malfunction of their systems, and they were clearly ordered to respond right away. And there's like a particular person that was meant to execute on it, and that person didn't. He chose not to do it because the chances of that being a malfunction are relatively slim. But he considered it. I forgot the name of that guy, but basically he kind of saved the world single-handedly if you think about it like that.
it's a saint.
And I think there's been a number of occurrences, numbers of instances where we already were with a hair's breadth away from Armageddon. And again, like in some ways, it's consciousness sort of orchestrating in a way that we make it through. And I personally believe, sort of, this is the non-dual perspective on this whole topic, that it's already predetermined. I think we will make it through. That's not our destiny. Our destiny is not to um, falter here on the precipice, but we will make it through. However, the dualistic reality is that we have to find that way. We have to find the right solutions, and we have to work at that shift within ourselves, within the collective, in order to make it happen, to fulfill the prophecy, so to speak.
Mm, yeah, to fulfill the prophecy. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing. If one is centered enough within themselves, if they had the quote awakening, then it does seem like a prophecy that needs to be fulfilled. There's a pull. I feel a pull toward this better world that we're speaking on.
Mm,
And it's like if it wasn't a reality, a future reality, then I wouldn't feel that pull. It's not
exactly.
delusion.
It's the
You know,
future you already sort of
yeah,
pulling you into that reality.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We all can feel it, like the possibility, the sense of awe and deep connection and just magic that is available to us. And at times it just pops up, whether we go to a festival or a little gathering or a ceremony, and we see that quality of life emerge already. But like, just think of it like on a planetary scale at some point, that you travel through countries, and you can just feel the depth and breadth of heart soul connection. It's
Hmm.
really, I think it's really about activating the earth soul, and
Mm,
then living it through the human body. And
yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, it's available to us. We just need to find the ways and sort of activate the people around us and the networks that we're in.
Mm. Yeah, and it really is that simple too, right? We have these sort of grandiose visions of all of this technology, all of this innovation,
Yeah,
but it's really quite simple to bring
it is.
about
Yeah.
the kingdom of heaven. You find it within, as Jesus said. And then it just naturally reverberates. Like that energy just naturally resonates with the goings on of your life, with the people in your life, and the things that you do.
Yeah. Can
Right?
I just read you a little quote that I found just
Please.
yesterday, which
Yeah.
fits perfectly into here? It's a quote from a book called Turning to One Another. Have you heard of that?
No.
It's by a woman called Margaret Wheatley, and I didn't know her, but it's a beautiful quote. It says, "There's no greater power than a community discovering what it cares about. Ask what is possible, not what's wrong, and keep asking. Notice what you care about. Assume that many others share your dreams. Be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. Talk to people you know. Talk to people you don't know. Talk to people you never talk to. Be intrigued by the differences you hear. Expect to be surprised. Treasure curiosity more than certainty. Invite in everybody who cares to work on what's possible. Acknowledge that everyone is an expert about something. Know that creative solutions come from new connections. Remember, you don't fear people whose stories you know. Real listening always brings people closer together. Trust that meaningful conversations can change your world. Rely on human goodness. Stay together. And I find that so beautiful because it's so simple, right? Like you said, we tend to overcomplicate things and make it very complex. But really, it comes down to like this beautiful book title, turning to one another, and just starting conversations. Because the moment you really get to know the other person, you really start to treasure them in most cases, because everyone ultimately has a good heart underneath.
Hmm.
Um, so it's
Yeah,
really ultimately quite simple.
really is. It's to love thy neighbor.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah. And then all of this stuff just plays out how it's supposed to play out. Yeah, that's the thing. I think the for us that are already on this wavelength of the kingdom of heaven, we could say, of this new world, new earth, it's to just be that loving servant to one another.
Hmm.
Whatever your job or vocation is, it really doesn't matter. It's just love thy neighbor. Listen. Sit down and listen. Recognize that the other person is another person, just like you,
Hmm.
that they're going through their own struggle. And that's
Hmm.
truly how we pave the way, because all of this just like naturally unfolds, like how what you have to do per se, what the world has to do, it just naturally unfolds. I feel like, and this may sound corny, but the power of love has just a way of working through us where we don't really have to worry about it too much. It just
Hmm.
works through us naturally, fluidly, and
Hmm.
flows through how it's supposed to flow through. And when we try to get in the way, we try to control, we try to dictate things, that's when we cause suffering. That's when the breakdown occurs. That's when we just create distortion. But if you just get out of your own way, then naturally the kingdom of heaven imbues in your own life, your own soul, your own consciousness, and ultimately the world altogether.
Hmm.
Hope that doesn't
Yeah.
sound too corny, but I really do believe that it's quite simple in that regard. It's the simplicity that leads to a grand change, you know?
Yeah. 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 I like that. And what comes up for me is like, I think people in the sort of consciousness realm, at least myself, often really put on a lot of pressure on themselves to, be part of the solution and try to, support the healing of the earth and
Yeah.
try to save the world, etc. And really,
Yeah.
yes, that's part of it. And we need to do the work, quote unquote. And that often shows up as like, being quite disciplined and, working long hours, etc. But at the same time, it really needs to be done from a place of deep surrender into the flow of
Mhm.
life, into that
Mhm.
state of love that you're describing.
Yep.
Um, where I am being continuously reminded of this beautiful image of the Bhagavad Gita, where it says you have the rights to your work, but you don't have the rights to the fruits of your work. So
Mhm.
we have to become really completely detached of what the outcome really even is,
Yeah.
because in some ways we don't really know what the best outcome is. Life will take care of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're being, as a family, continuously reminded of, you know, my wife and I, and to some extent our kids, have become more and more attuned to when we realize that we're not in flow, that we're kind of trying to will something, or, it feels slight antagonistic just energetically, and to just notice that and then ask the question, so how can I adjust to be again part of the river and flow
Yep.
better, is as simple, it sounds simplistic, but really is ultimately the daily practice.
Mhm. Seriously, the daily practice every day
Mm,
that we wake up. I try to have the intention of how can I serve? How
Mm,
can I serve? How can I serve myself, first of all?
mm,
And
mm,
then that naturally just resonates, I feel, to others. Save yourself to save the world. But it does come down to that is we don't worry about the fruits of our labor. We serve some sort of force, some sort of energy that works through us. And it's that
mm,
simple. Then you don't really have to
mm,
worry about it much.
mm,
And yeah, yeah. It's like you can get down to the realm of consciousness in that way, very esoteric vision. And then I look at on the physical almost as a reflection of the inner consciousness. And then it just has me wonder, so what is being created through us on the physical realm? Because there is a physical manifestation. Um, there are the fruits, even though we don't worry about the fruits, there is the physical manifestation in terms of the technology and innovation.
mm,
And what does it seem like to me? It's like we're creating literally a different reality. We're creating a new dimension, almost like a wormhole is opening very, very slowly. So we're
mhm,
creating this like new dimension within ourselves,
mm,
metaphorically. But on the physical realm, it's reflecting into like we're tiptoeing into this alien realm that is loving, ultimately, that I do
mm,
believe is made of love. So it's like we
mm,
curate it within ourselves, and then it reflects in just a slower rate, at a slower level of manifestation on the outside world. I
mm,
think altogether, right? Because there's different facets of the innovation that we just spoke of in terms of AI, computers, technology, genetic engineering, um, just there's many different facets that we just described. But ultimately, I think altogether, what it's creating is this very far out new reality. Like we're
mhm,
birthing a new reality for ourselves. We're birthing a new species in terms of technology and AI. It might be a different being, but we're making like I know this sounds crazy. It sounds so far out, but we're making heaven. That's not in any of the books. Actually, it is. It's in Christianity. But in terms of how it's detailed, um, in terms of like the physical manifestations, nobody envisioned it like this. But we are, I think, quite literally making heaven. It's a different realm, right? So if you were to like be teleported 100 years from now, all of a sudden you snap your fingers, you're 100 years in the future, it would appear as though you just teleported into a different realm. That's how much I believe we're changing the world right now. We're at the precipice of. So, quite literally, we're building the wormhole. And it's all through this vortex of inner love. As above, so below. You know? Point of my story is like, what a wonderful time to be alive. We're literally seeing heaven being built. You don't even have to use the word heaven, right? You don't have to use that archetype. But it's just ultimately a better world. It's a better reality. It's a better dream state that is being built right before our eyes. And hallelujah. Hallelujah, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with you in large parts. It's going to be super, super different. And a lot of it will just completely feel magical, just as much today feels magical to someone 100 years from back
Yeah.
from
It's like
today.
an alien world, like
It's a
what we're
totally
doing right
alien
now.
world, exactly.
Yeah.
It will be probably more dramatic, potentially, in a shorter time frame from now into the future. I think human tendencies around greed, fear, lust, etc., the vices will still be there to some extent. Um, they may be collectively transformed to some extension, but I think the human drama will still play itself out, but in a world that is embedded in a completely different paradigm and different systems that just don't allow for the massive amount of um, inequality and evil that
And
is being
conflict.
perpetrated, conflict,
Yeah.
Um, because we are up leveling our system, we are up leveling our paradigms.
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin is a prime example for that. For instance, where to be on a Bitcoin standard would mean, for instance, for governments that they can't really just print money to wage war. And if you look at the amount of people dying in wars, it really spikes exactly the time when we sort of developed fiat currencies, where governments can just print as much money as they want.
Ah,
So the whole like warfare over the last 120 years or so is really linked to the nature of our money. And so are many other aspects of our culture. So, for instance, the consumerism that we see is very much tied to the fact that we live in an inflationary monetary paradigm, because we all know, consciously or unconsciously, that our money is worth less tomorrow or a year from now. And so we are
yeah.
all subtly incentivized to spend it rather than save it. Because if we
Mm-hmm.
would live in a deflationary monetary standard, which is any hard money standard, like the gold standard was a deflationary monetary standard, Bitcoin will be or is a deflationary monetary standard, then your money is going to be worth more tomorrow or a year from now. And then it all incentivizes us to save. And saving is kind of the bedrock of innovation and advancement for a society. So I'm just getting into one aspect, how systems will look very different, which create
Mm-hmm.
different guardrails for human nature to flourish in different ways.
Yeah.
And so, that's where I sort of have a slight sort of departure from. I'm not sure if it's completely heaven on earth, like, we all live
I got I
heavily,
got far out. It's okay.
happily ever after. Maybe in some, there may be periods, like you
I'm
can,
talking future, future.
yeah, and maybe you have to trace the Vedas and the different yugas,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
and maybe there will be a yuga which will just be so blissful and incredible. Um, but I think especially this kind of these system upgrades will just guardrail civilization in a way that is just completely different to today.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Yeah, I'm glad you took it back to Earth. Came back down. Yeah. That's actually a good note to touch upon is cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and how that's going to play a role. Because there's one part of me that believes in it. I have plenty of crypto. I have plenty of Bitcoin. So I believe in it in that way. I know a little bit about it. I'm not an expert, but I know I could explain it to a layman. So I understand it. I understand the whole blockchain premise. But then there's a part of me that's like, well, is money even going to be a thing in the future? Right? If we all have nuclear reactors at our house, absolute abundance and things of that nature, the economy as we know it is going to change. So if Bitcoin is somewhat based upon the economy that we have now, currency, right? The idea of currency and holding value, I don't, how does it like congeal, right? How does it work? Where is the value placed upon the crypto or anything really? Like, how do we place value on things if nobody's working, essentially? Nobody has a job because that's how we derive value in some way, right? It's like, what value do you provide by your services? Well, if all services are done by robots, you know what I'm getting at here?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing that I would say, I would segment Bitcoin from other cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is really the first and arguably most important innovation in that space. A lot of the other coins tend to be, Ponzi schemes and just replicas of other things, and in many cases don't just really have a real use case. And the use case of a distributed ledger, um, the best use case is to storing money, storing value, storing wealth. And so money is kind of the winner takes it all use case. And there is just going to be one for this particular use case, and most likely it's going to be Bitcoin. There's not going to be another one. Ethereum tried it. They said they ultrasound money and they kind of failed at this point. So that's one thing. And then if you really trace back and ask what is money, it comes down to five properties. And or let's say historically, um, money emerged as a medium of exchange to solve the so-called problem of coincidence of wants, because we started just bartering in the local economies. You know, I fixed your shoes and you gave me some meat or some honey or whatever it was. The problem was when we both wanted something that, you know, wasn't compatible. I wanted some water or some wine and you only had you know, meat. And
Yeah.
so a liquid unit was needed. And so naturally, different forms of money were used as to enable this kind of trade. And so it was from like beads or shells to livestock, etc., was used. And over time, the best type of money was different metals. So first silver, then gold, and gold eventually emerged as the best type of money because it fulfilled the five properties of money in the best possible way. And the five properties of money, let's see if I can rattle them off, but like divisibility, durability, portability, verifiability, and most importantly, scarcity. So divisibility, how divisible is it? Durability, how long lasting is it? Portable, how easily can you transport it? Verifiable, how easily can you verify it? And then scarcity is kind of the most important one, because if you can easily, if it's not scarce, like let's say beads, you
Yeah.
can just inflate away the monetary base. And that happened many times in history.
It's happening right now.
And yeah, like happening right now, exactly. And so coming back to your question, you know, I think money, I've sat on this question for a long time. I actually think money is an incredible, it's like the base layer technology that enabled everything. Because if we wouldn't be able to trade through money, through having a medium of exchange, you and I couldn't pursue our own skills and endeavors and interests,
Yeah.
because um, only because we are trading on this global scale by virtue of having this technology called money, we have this enormous diversity in terms of what people can bring to the quote unquote marketplace. And in some ways, money enables this Cambrian explosion of diversity, of people bringing their innovations, their ideas, their goods and services to the world. And in that sense, I think money is totally divine. You know, it's this gift from God, but we've
Yeah.
broken it. You know, money is
Yeah.
totally broken as it is today. But if we fix the money, and in the Bitcoin community, there's this mantra saying, "Fix the money, fix the world," because it has this root driving power to impact so many ways of society, socioeconomic structures, that we will just see a completely different world. And you have the analogy already from the golden era, or the what was it called, the golden something. Maybe you know exactly what I mean. It's the late
No.
1900s, um,
The gold
where the
standard?
gold, yeah, it's the gold standard, exactly. But there's
Okay.
a particular name for that period. It was like
Okay.
from, I think, 1870 to like 1910.
I'll look it up
And
after this. I'll put it on screen.
yeah. Yeah. And it was the beginning of the gold standard. And like there was this explosion of prosperity and explosion of innovation. Like so many key innovations were derived in that time. And a lot of people are saying that's because we had this monetary base layer that gave people the ability to just pursue their interests and their trade in ways that wasn't possible before.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
So what innovations you think could come from us using or utilizing cryptocurrency that wouldn't normally be able to be done through fiat currency and the fiat system.
Well, like I said earlier, I think there's the unknown unknowns, right? Like there will be ways how the world will show up, and different types of jobs will emerge that we can't even think about. I think one aspect that is already visible, or you can have a conjecture about, is that if the world is really going to be very much ruled by AI plus robotics,
Mm. Hmm.
then these entities will definitely not do value exchange via our
Yeah.
fiat monetary system, which
Yeah.
goes
Exactly.
from Monday to Friday, from 8 to 6.
Yeah. Exactly. They're not going to go to the bank.
They're not going to, cash a check. Um,
Yeah.
so, it's going to be micro payments. Whether it's going to be on the Bitcoin blockchain base layer, probably not, because it's relatively slow and has a limit in terms of how many transactions can be processed. It probably will be layers upon Bitcoin. So that's how I imagine it, at least, and that's already emerging with Lightning networks, for instance, which is a pretty robust network on top of Bitcoin. It's a layer two on top of Bitcoin. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you think about the ripple effects into society, I mentioned earlier the so-called time preference, which basically means we, are all subtly incentivized to spend the money, and we're all kind of anxious about money. That, just like, if you step away from humanity for a second and just look at this like anxious, greedy behavior around money, is kind of strange, right? Like, we're all
Mm.
trying to
Yeah.
hoard money. Why
Yeah.
is
Right.
that? I think it's partially because money is losing its value, because
Yeah.
we all know that it's kind of decaying, and it's decaying at a quite rapid rate. Like, at the current inflation rate, within like 15 years, it's worth half what it is today. So it's, like, it's not a conscious thing, but like, obviously the subconscious, like the whole spirit body, knows it's decaying. So we're all trying to sort of hoard it. And so money that is not decaying but appreciating will have a huge psychospiritual effect on society. Just the stress levels that families go through now with high inflation, two people being wage earners not being able to afford a house in this environment. It used to be that just one wage earner could comfortably afford a house.
Hmm.
So, I think the biggest thing is the sort of societal, psychospiritual change that will happen through a move to a hard money, deflationary hard money standard. What
Mm.
individual technologies will come online and innovations, I have no sort of,
Yeah. It's hard to say.
yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to say.
It's such a big topic. There's so many repercussions that could come from it. And I
Yeah.
believe the innovation of AI is what is going to lead us to utilization of cryptocurrency, because it's been around since what, 2013, right? Or even before that,
2008, actually, 2009,
2008.
2009. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been around since then, and it's still people like, they don't really know much about it. They don't
Yeah.
believe in it. So we have yet as a species to utilize this wonderful technology, but I believe AI is going to forcibly, again, use this technology, because our systems are going to be based upon AI, and AI is going to be like, what? Like you said, it's not going to cash a check. It's not going to write a check. It's going to use these systems that we developed because they're just essentially more efficient. And also, what's interesting about Bitcoin is it's based upon not the Federal Reserve, it's based upon the laws of physics. That's something that's never been done before in terms of money. It's based upon light, it's based upon the production of electricity.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yep.
When you really look at it at an energetic value, it's like, what is that? What is that? We're, we're somehow, we have this currency that's based upon the production of electricity. That's so wild. People think, you ever heard of people, this, calling Bitcoin a scam just off face value?
Sure.
It's like, what do you mean? Do you understand what this is? This is money based upon the production of electricity, decentralized. Anybody can do it. Anybody
Mm.
can mine it. That right there should make you go,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
yeah, these systems that we built are obviously going to use these more efficient systems of currency.
Yeah. And also the decay and the breakdown of our current monetary system will eventually push us
Yeah.
to a new system. So it's, coming
It's hand
back
in
to this
hand.
kind of phase change metaphor. The breakdown of the old paradigm will really usher in ultimately the new one.
The breakthrough. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what's going to seem rocky is the economic collapse, which I think we're witnessing. It's going to seem like dystopia, but ultimately, I do believe it will take us into some sort of idealistic utopian vision to the reinvigoration of our systems.
Yeah, it's a long road till then. I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of pain until then coming.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, the thesis of my book is that the around the breakdown trends that I'm tracing, ultimately, it's going to converge around money. That ultimately, the money as the substrate of human civilization, this kind of
Yeah.
ephemeral binding glue for us,
Yeah.
that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, because all these
Of
systems are
course.
disintegrating and straining, and eventually, if our, especially in case of the US dollar, which is the global reserve currency, if that goes to shit, whatever that means, most likely hyperinflation from my point of view, then we are facing something completely unprecedented.
Hmm.
Never in history has a global reserve currency at this scale, which is sort of the base layer of pretty much everything in the world, kind of evaporated. And that's a scenario that's pretty intense, but like definitely if you track the trajectories, really in the cards.
Hmm. It's definitely intense.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it's happening as we speak, man. It's just being artificially propped up through a lot of borrowing. Just people
yeah,
continually borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. What is that called? Fractional reserve banking. It's just propping us up, propping this artificial currency up. That it's just all fake. It's all fake. I mean, all money is somewhat fake in some sort of way. It's sort of like an idea, right, that we all agree on. But the fiat system is really fake. It's like fakery on top of the fakery. You know what I mean? And Bitcoin allows us to bring a little bit of realness, so hard money, right? That's the term.
yeah, yeah,
It
exactly.
creates the essence of reality to our system of money because, like I said before, it's literally tied to the laws of physics. You
Yeah,
can't
exactly.
you can't edit the laws of physics. So right then and there, it creates a realism. That's why
Yeah.
when people call it a scam, they call it fake. It's like you don't know enough about what it is. It's based upon the laws of physics, man. You can't edit the laws of physics.
You can't almost argue with people on that level, right? Because
No,
it's
you can't. Yeah.
literally, it's like the Matrix kind of. We are all so. It's like this parable of the fish swimming in water, and then the other fish saying, "Hey, how's the water today?" Like
Mm,
we can't really almost grasp to what extent, in this case, money is so all pervasive, and we have been living in a scam because we just have not, as a collective, fully penetrated the lie yet. And we are
mm,
starting to penetrate many, many lies at the moment. It's
mm-hmm.
like this revelatory time about money, about, the powers in the world, about, our individual identities. All of this is sort of starting to fly off the shelves, and
Yep.
it's scary. But like, to someone who calls BTC or Bitcoin a scam, it's like they are still holding on, most likely, to an old worldview that,
Yeah.
like, it's part of the whole tapestry. So you would have to then also address their nutrition,
Yeah. Exactly.
what media they consume,
Yep.
how they talk to their wife, the whole nine yards,
It
right?
all relates.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. It's a fascinating way to put it. We've been living in a scam. That's the thing. It's people that may call Bitcoin a scam or AI, whatever, a scam. It's like you're living in the scam. You're in the
Well, it's
midst of
like
the
it's
scam.
our own unconsciousness, right? Like projected out into the world. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that we
Yeah.
have built this monetary system is not an accident. It's like our shadow manifest in the world. And
Yeah.
so it's a painful wake up process to realize what horrible things we have perpetrated.
Mm.
And it's happening so much, like, you know, people waking up to the atrocities that are being committed in terms of warfare and in terms of global power structures, etc. But like, we kind of really have to look at it. While I'm saying this, I see this image from Clockwork Orange, where this guy, like, I don't know if you know the movie, but like, he has to see this one movie scene, and I feel like that humanity is like being force fed truth at the moment
Yeah.
in order to really purge out all this unconscious shadowy stuff, and then
Yeah.
choose a better system from there.
Mm.
Um,
Well said. Mm-hmm. Something's going on. That's for sure.
Something's happening.
Something's happening. It's happening. It's happening all at once. Everything, everywhere, all at once. Have you seen that movie?
I have not yet. No, is it good?
Oh, you got to see that movie. Oh yeah, it's good. Everything,
Okay.
everywhere, all at once. Very good. I
It's a good
recommend that
title.
to you,
Good
Sebastian.
title.
And yeah, yes, I recommend that to anybody listening. It's one of my favorites. And yeah, I feel as though we're amidst the everything, everywhere, all at once essence. And yeah, interesting times. May you be born in interesting times, as they say. And
Mm.
these are the times.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what? Moral of the story, it's like we have all of this stuff going on the phenomenal plane, and I think we already touched upon it, but I'm going to reiterate it. It's all about going within. If you can find that stillness within, that peace within, then no matter what happens on the outside world, you are seated on this throne of peace within,
Mm.
right? And I don't feel as though there's any other way to find the order amidst the chaos than finding the order within oneself. So that's all I want to say. I think we can wrap it up at that. We spoke upon
Beautiful.
a lot of
Yeah.
different topics, but I'll just say it. I say it in every podcast. Go within yourself. That's it. Go within, meditate a little bit, find that peace, and it'll all make sense. It'll all make sense in time.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. But yeah, man, I don't have anything else to say. Do you have anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap this up?
Oh my God, no. I think we
All right.
covered a lot of ground, so all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to
This
be
was an
here.
awesome
Thank you.
talk. Seriously. Yeah, this was a great talk. We touched upon a lot of gold. I wish you all the best, man. Thank you for coming on here. I'm glad we got to make this happen. And that's it. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Cheers.
Peace and love to you. Peace and love to everybody that listen. Bye, everybody.